As Truman Burbank would say, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever and whenever this video may find you or you may find it. I'm going to continue a series that I meant to start 9 months ago. I started it with an upload of a Ripple of Hope speech, and this project that I'm doing is going to be basically just me covering speeches that I like, speeches from history, not limited to history, but monologues. I like from film or literature. So it'll be my reading of them and some kind of an analysis. So previously I've covered A Ripple of Hope, and that video was just myself reading the speech. I'm going to try to give a little bit of an intro this time, have the speech in the middle, and some reflection, some personal reflection, and I'd love to hear back from you guys what you think of the speech. But today we're going to be covering The Man in the Arena by President Theodore Roosevelt, which actually wasn't the title of the speech, but that portion of it, as I understand, is just what kind of stuck. But some background. And I'm going to be reading here my little script if you don't mind. Some speeches change elections, some change history. A few escape the moment they were written for and become something else entirely. That's kind of what happened in this case, right? On April 23rd, 1910, over 100 years ago, wow, Theodore Roosevelt stood before the Sorbonne in Paris. I'm going to look like such an idiot if I mispronounce that. I'm not familiar with it, but that location or that landmark. But he delivered a speech titled Citizenship in a Republic. It was a long address on duty, democracy, and public life. Almost no one remembers that title. They remember the one paragraph that we're going to cover today. A paragraph that has survived presidents, wars, championship games, military academies, boardrooms, and generations of ordinary people trying to find the courage to do difficult things. Richard Nixon quoted it in both his victory speech and his resignation. Nelson Mandela gave a copy of it to the captain of South Africa's rugby team before the 1995 World Cup final. Kind of funny that we're in that time of the World Cup again, right? Coaches have read it in locker rooms, soldiers have carried it into combat, entrepreneurs have taped it into office walls. More than a century later, one paragraph still refuses to disappear. We're going to go over that paragraph and ask ourselves why that may be, right? Because Roosevelt isn't promising that courage will be rewarded in any way. He's arguing something much more unsettling, that the only people who truly count are the ones willing to risk failure in full view of everyone else. Risk isn't the price of greatness, it's the price of admission. So I'll cover a little bit of why this quote found me, how it touched me, and where I came across it. Everybody's probably seen it, but I can actually remember 3 points in my life where I came across this speech or this paragraph that were, these moments were kind of coincidences, and then I kind of took it as more than that, really. But I first read the words. A literature teacher of mine in high school had a poster of the paragraph up in her classroom, and I thought it was cool. I think I did an analysis on it and really reflected on it for one of the assignments that she had given me. But years later, they appeared again during my time at West Point, engraved on an axe, a big, like a battle axe that was in a glass case. In my cadet company was A1, 1st Regiment Alpha Company. And at the time I was there, the mascot was the Avengers, but that axe was a bit of memorabilia from, I don't know how long before the company mascot was the Axemen, which is pretty cool, kind of like a executioner hood, mascot, and then the axe that I'm sure they would carry at, football games and that kind of stuff. But I saw it engraved on that axe, and I remembered it from high school, and I was like, wow. And I thought it was a coincidence, and it motivated me a bit, right? Then it was quoted, I think, by a chaplain, if I remember right. And I was at 4 Army-Navy games, obviously, during my time there, and I suited up and was on the team for one of them. But I think that was my sophomore year. I think it was my junior or senior year that the chaplain, during the speech at the beginning to start the game, before kickoff, mentioned that speech. And I was like, whoa, here it is again, So I stopped thinking of them as coincidences. The first time, I admired the words when I first saw it, and I reflected and analyzed them with that assignment. The second time, I needed them when I came across that axe and the engraving. And I've never heard this or read this paragraph the same since. So without further ado, here's that speech, and I'll deliver it to the best of my abilities. Theodore Roosevelt, Citizen in a Republic, Paris, April 23rd, 1910. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. So that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. So that's a cold and timid soul, somebody who doesn't try, I guess, essentially. So here I'm going to go into my reflection that I put together at my computer while I was reading and reflecting on this. I got some notes down here, so I'll go over those with you here. Most read this passage as a celebration of courage, which it is, but that's not what made it immortal, in my opinion. The real force of Roosevelt's argument is that he refuses to give spectators moral credit. The critic may be intelligent, he may even be right, but he's wagered nothing. He has no skin in the game. The person in the arena has wagered reputation, identity, years of work, the possibility of public failure. One risks being wrong. The other risks becoming someone. Roosevelt redraws the line between success and failure. Winning is no longer what grants dignity. Participation does. In his moral universe, entering the arena is already a kind of victory. And there's another kind of irony that goes unnoticed. Roosevelt spoke these words after he'd already become Theodore Roosevelt. It was after his presidency, right? Presidency, war hero, world figure. History had already rendered its verdict and its opinion on him. It's easier to praise risk from the far side of triumph. Most of us encounter these words from the opposite direction. Before the promotion, before the business succeeds, before the book is finished, before anyone believes in us. before we know whether the sacrifice will amount to anything at all. That is where this passage has always lived for me. Not after certainty, before it. Because courage after certainty is memory. Courage before certainty is faith. Every generation inherits a handful of sentences that refuse to die. Not because they're beautifully written, though these are, in my opinion, and not because they're famous, but because they continue to describe something permanent about being human, something relatable and something kind of constant. Long after Theodore Roosevelt is remembered by historians, these words will be spoken by people standing at the edge of their own arena, trying to decide whether to step forward. That was the reflection I noted, and I'm going to pause here and think if I'd like to add anything else. But it's tough. It's tough to strive. It's tough to set goals and try to accomplish them. And I find myself in a time right now where maybe what the critic has is a kind of complacency and a kind of an ill-placed or wrongly placed, just complacency, happy with where they're at and happy to be a critic instead of, stepping into the arena themselves. So that's the real danger, right, is becoming the critic. I think everyone's always at risk of becoming the critic, no matter how many arenas you've stepped into. And thinking personally on my situation, I've stepped into arenas, time and time again, different arenas in education and professional life, and even personal family arenas of being a husband, being a father, being a brother and a son. I'd say maybe where I'll take this is that there's not one arena. Maybe that's going to be my input, that I don't think I've come across anything similar. So there's arenas in every aspect of our life, right? We have our health and fitness arena. We have our family, personal relationship arena. We have our professional work, financial goal, type arenas, and different aspects of our life. We can't, it's almost like we have to be, in multiple places at once, or my goodness, it's like, maybe even one battle after another.